this is the most incredible thing regarding that article that was written. It has to do with the civil federal trial, the Montgomery investigation that took place in Seattle. And what your audience needs to understand is, yes, I took the Fifth Amendment for 200 and I thought it was 80 questions or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But the reason behind that was there was a threat in one of the motions made by the ACLU that myself and others should be investigated and prosecuted for espionage.
Uh-huh.
At that point in time, the county attorney's office, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors would not provide me legal counsel.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the judge and petitioned. I didn't want to testify because I was at risk. The judge didn't care. He basically told me on record that he's not pursuing me, but the federal government might.
And didn't he say something? Didn't he say something along the lines that things that you said could be used against you that way?
I don't know if he said that, but the inference is that the federal government is sitting right in this trial.
Yeah.
And I want you to understand, I wasn't overly concerned about espionage, but the fact is this is a ginned-up case by the ACLU.
Right.
And evidence that was presented, I had an idea of what they were going to do because I was ordered to a deposition, which I took the Fifth and sat there for 6 hours while they asked me question after question, and I could see exactly what they were doing.
Right. And you had no attorney?
No, I had no attorney. And you're not, as law enforcement, you're not trained on how to take the Fifth. You're trained to testify.
Right.
Well, I threw everything I ever learned about testimony out the window that day because the only thing I was concerned with is I was going to get the truth of this investigation out and on record.
Right.
And the questions that I was asked, the evidence that was put forth by the ACLU and their attorneys was cherry-picked evidence to go along the theme that they wanted to convince this court that Arpaio investigated him.
Right. The judge.
Investigated the judge.
Right.
Yes. And I'm telling you, I know the evidence. I turned over 3,000 documents. There is evidence that they never put forward, they never released to the public, they took evidence out of context, and they're peppering this question after question, and every time it was a strong point that I didn't want to answer, they were asking the judge to consider my non-answer as being to their affirmative by inference,
mm-hmm.
which you can do in a civil proceeding.
Mm-hmm.
So I waited, and I waited for the ACLU to rest, which means they can no longer go back and ask me anything that they asked me before unless I open it up in testimony. And at that point in time, I waited for Arpaio's counsel to come up and ask me a question. I waited for the redirect. And at that point in time, I said, and I think my words were, nobody did this.
Right.
And I went through the investigation.
Right.
I wasn't going to be led down no primrose path by these people. I had no attorney. I had nobody putting up contrary evidence. I had nobody putting up the truth. I just sat there and I endured it until I couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
So what is ever in my testimony is the truth that has gone on in that investigation.
Right.
And what's being misrepresented is this notion that the information and all the information Montgomery gave us was garbage. Well, I actually testified to the contrary and said there was some information that did prove out.
Right.
And they kind of disregard those statements, and they take now email snippets where different parts of time, over a 2-year investigation, this is different time segments that we're corresponding through emails, but it's about things that are happening in that moment.
Right.
Not going all the way back to the beginning.
Right.
With information that he gave us. And I can tell you this about Mr. Montgomery. There are things that Dennis Montgomery told myself and Detective Makowitz that are turning out to be true today.
Right.
There would be no way for him to have that knowledge unless he was there.
Right.
There was information he gave us.
Years ago.
I referenced, I think, in Alex Jones, information he referenced about attorney-client breach,
mm-hmm.
that information was being collected, eavesdropping information.
Mm-hmm.
And Edward Snowden, about 2-3 months after Montgomery alerted to this, it was released in one of the...
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's no way Montgomery could have known this unless he was there when it happened.
Right. I get it. and you
it's
know,
a lot.
I know, and of course that's one of the other reasons why you didn't give an interview to that, and I'm going to call it, this is that rag in Arizona, because they're not going to get this right. They're not going to put the proper timeline in order or the context. They proved it from the article they just wrote. They went back and cherry-picked from emails, and because you didn't give a testimony, they just kind of made it what they wanted it to be.
Well, Carl, it's the same thing they do with the birth certificate. Nobody wants to talk about the real evidence. They just want to talk about it and make it what they want.
Right.
I'm not interested in that. And that's what's going on in the media throughout the country.
Right.
I mean, you see it